I swear I'm not shaking the screen here. Have you ever played StarCraft 1 and said to yourself, damn, I wish there was more? JoyMax, a South Korean company, released the English version of Atrox in 2002. The same guys who made the Silk Road MMO, but let's address the elephant in the room. This game is 100% a clone of StarCraft. From the engine, to the graphics, to the sounds. This came out at the same time with RTS titans like Age of Mythology, Stronghold Crusader, and Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, so it's understandable if you missed it. After playing it fully, I have to say it's also something more than a clone, with plenty of highlights and frustrating moments. I will go on the assumption that you've played StarCraft, as there are many parallels to make, but let's dive in. We're in the far future, and it's hard to put an actual date when the action happens, since each faction has its own calendar. But wait, the answer lies on the back of the CD case. In 2334, a descendant of Albert Einstein, not mentioned at all in-game, tried to separate the good and evil from mankind into two cells, the white and the black angel cells. Those ended up evolving into the Intellions and the Createse, who now have to fight the last remaining humans in the Atrox war. Locked in a constant conflict, we are a nameless commander, tasked with wiping out everyone else across 3 campaigns. Hard to believe this meatball looking thing is human, but what do I know? Also, I swear this is a translation error, the first of many in this game, but the Createse were called the Kreators in the German edition of the game, and that's what I'll call them from now on, because Createse just sounds stupid. Visually, it's very similar to StarCraft, the same font, cursor icon and the same HUD style. The skirmish and campaign menus are the same, and we get to see the same 3 campaign split with the factions being analyzed. Each faction will have its own section, where I'll go into the specifics as there's plenty to talk about. Some visual effects are the same, like the engineer building something, the marine and firebat attack effects for the private and flamewalker, the hydralisk live on in the leopard with the same spitting action, and even the mutalisk glaive can be found in the attack of the mangler. Reusing all those effects freed them up to focus on other areas, like the map tilesets. We've got them all. Barren deserts with bone-filled canyons, purple alien planets with ruins, black seas that lay completely still, lush green fields with spectral trees, and here we start going off the deep end. Fields of red worm-like tentacles, forests of egg sacs from unknown aliens, crevices filled with corpses of things that tried to escape, and I swear I saw some trees with eyeballs on them. The only problem with the maps is the size. Every campaign map feels it's 4 times the size it should be, so you end up passing through a labyrinth of cliffs or empty plains, making the maps feel barren. There aren't any neutral animals or structures, and there's very little movement in the map itself, making things feel static or frozen. The factions have between 11 and 13 units with different levels of usefulness, and their own models that have a cohesive design with the faction. Some of them look goofy, like this long-armed behemoth, but others are really interesting, like the Flying Fortress, Copolymer Battleship, or Demon Bugs. The buildings are large, and bases end up taking plenty of space as a consequence. Some missions have special structures like warp gates, prisons, or cosmic horrors that are huge and detailed. A real highlight of this game. The buildings also like to explode in huge fireballs, so I guess we're keeping TNT in each house. Every unit and building in the game has a holographic portrait of it when selected, except the heroes. Those are unique, but not always what you expect. These are clearly humans, especially Brian here, who's an absolute Chad. But what about this one? Yep, he's an Intellion, and so is Neptune, although he looks more like the Creator heroes. Speaking of Creators, they're all demonic beasts, but why does this one look like someone skinned him alive? Many of the sound effects like unit deaths and attacks are either lifted from StarCraft or just remixed. But at least nothing sounds out of place. The game has 6 tracks in total, and only 3 of them are good, to be honest. The orchestral pieces work well with the combat and the base building. And the other ambient tracks are there just to fill the silence. Sound can make or break the immersion of any game, and sadly we just don't have that here. One thing I dislike is how all the heroes talk in the same way in the story. They're all quick-tempered and arrogant, and there aren't any differences between them. When it comes to voice acting, the creators are mostly limited to weird sounds and squishes. The Intellions have mechanical and beeping noises, but Anioms and the airships are strangely the only ones with actual English voice lines.
I'll blow you all away. That should be easy. I'll blow you all away.
The only problem with the Intellion pilots, as well as the whole Hominid faction, is that everyone sounds bored. The unit lines are uninspired, and the actors unmotivated, so you just end up ignoring their quips eventually.
Move fast! Operation ready for action. Boring.
There's also no voice acting in cutscenes or in between missions. That leaves us with a single hero with decent voice lines that we get to use for a single mission.
I'll show you the warrior's power. I'll break through the front. Under attack. Shiver in terror.
Before we can play anything, there are a few fixes we can do to improve things. If we download CNC DDraw and add it to the game files, it will stop flickering when you start the game, or a cutscene. It will fix the color issues, and you can safely alt-tab from the game. And most importantly, we can upscale the resolution. It looks a bit zoomed in from the original, but that's a trade I'll make any day to get rid of the black bars on the side. And that's it. The game never crashed on me once, and it ran without any issues, which is surprising considering how old this is. The gameplay feels exactly like StarCraft 1, like this is a custom campaign for it. So I have a list of a few interesting areas where Atrox diverged from the original with some improvements. You have two resources, muons, the moist minerals you find in these blue pits, and quark, the gas, or in this case the oil you pump out of the ground with specialized refineries. You don't need workers to operate those, so it feels like we have auto gas from the get-go. You can even stack multiple stations on the same node depending how much space you have next to that quark pool. And you can quickly convert between resources with a loss at any refinery, but it still takes a long time to set up an economy and upgrades. The population cap goes up to 250, so you can build up huge armies, but it's mostly going to be the AI building them against you. You've got a limited control group capped at 18 units, 6 more than StarCraft, and it punishes the Zerg player more than anyone else here as well. All the workers are semi-air units, so they won't get stuck trying to mine resources or build something in a corner of the base. They can't get shut down by units with ground attacks only, but they also can't fly over cliffs. But that also means you can't pull them to help defend an early base attack. Units also gain experience from kills and rank up, giving them more stats as a symbol of their veterancy. The buildings and units also have strange names, so let's take the following example. For the Hominians, an engineer raises the population cap by building a house so he can train a commando from the barracks. Simple, right? For the Intellions, a nailer raises the population cap by morphing into a pulse center so he can train a hickey from the outpost. And finally the Kreators, an Aussie raises the population cap by morphing into a Toza farm so you can train a fire from the haunt. You'll get used to things eventually, but the game doesn't have any tooltips explaining what units, buildings, abilities or upgrades do. This is so old there aren't any wiki pages or forums with strategies, so you'll have to learn everything by trying things out. No wait, there is a reference card, here you go. Now you should know everything. Everything starts with the intro cutscene, and it's hard to tell what they wanted to tell us with this. I love the way this guy is punching the jar of flesh. Is this the same flesh horror from Breed? Are these connected, or am I exclusively playing games with weird things in green jars? The game also doesn't have any difficulty options, but I swear I'm playing on brutal. Some missions feel impossible with the amount of units they throw your way, but we'll talk about that once we get into the campaigns. One last thing to mention is that not all hotkeys work, so you'll be stuck clicking abilities because who wants to sit in the middle of a fight tapping the same key in desperation? So let's talk about the factions, and what better way than to play through the campaigns. Unsure if there is a specific order to these, as everything's unlocked from the start. The humans are selected by default and they're the easiest to learn the game with, so we're starting with them. The Hominians. Survivors of the Confederacy of Earth, after the creation of the two other races, they got the short end of the stick as the Deltas, hive mind controlling the Kreators, decided to make Earth their new home. And so our story begins with the fledgling survivors hiding in the polar regions of the world. forced to develop new weapons and become cyborgs to resist the influence of the Creators, while waging a guerrilla war against their oppressors. We start the campaign with a briefing, and while the light blue text details the Kreators' story, you can skip it once it gets to the dialogue between the various commanders and heroes. It's a waste of time, but I like how it all ends with "accomplish your mission." We have to destroy the enemy base so they don't find the hidden human colony. This is an easy no-build mission to get you started on controlling units. We've got a squad of privates and commandos to deal with everything. But let's not forget our two heroes, Brian, the Firebat Goliath, and Rakeen, the Chad who is driving the non-siege tank. Earth is not a hospitable place for us anymore, so we'll have to evacuate and establish a new colony somewhere else. But to do that, we'll have to defend our position for 13 minutes until rescue arrives. To aid us, we've got flying bunkers that cloak. Take that, StarCraft. I build up and deal with the small attack wave, while learning what each building does, and every faction uses a tier system, unlocking new buildings and stronger units as you upgrade your command center, similar to the way the Zerg are upgrading from the hatchery to the hive. I would have wanted from this campaign a slow pace of unlocking new units with each passing mission, but that's not the case here. You have everything unlocked except the tier 3 flying fortress battleship from the second mission, which ends up being confusing as you're trying to grasp the game and the units in a timed defense section with huge enemy waves. Let's make some tanks, and here's where the game starts to show its fangs. Look at this attack wave. I restart and get some better defenses faster, more tanks and end-tier ATVs. And by some miracle, I split the enemy force in such a way that we manage to take them out and survive until the dropships arrive. Next mission has us leading a strike force to bring Rakeen to the entrance of a captured underwater city, and once we secure the base, the game is content with leaving you alone. Not a single attack wave will come, and I use this time to learn the units and buildings by building one of each. The Hominians use a design close to the Terrans, with various unit production buildings having tech lab attachments to unlock new units and upgrades. They can't lift off, but they can teleport short distances if you want to reposition it to better fit the add-ons. So we can just make a transport, load up our hero, and bring him to the objective to win. Why couldn't this have been the second mission instead of the Zerg feast? Anyway, our ships managed to escape to the planet K-Rider, Sea Rider? But some colony ships are attacked as they are leaving the system by the Kreators, which are investigating Jupiter for some reason. Then please tell me, why are we fighting the Intellions in this mission? I swear the story has nothing to do with the actual missions. We attack the resident Protoss of the game, and you have to take out their bases that house the battleships. Funnily enough, we can relocate our turrets at any time. The range isn't that big, but it's still very useful. So I set up a choke point with turrets, the commandos that can burrow down and attack from this ambush position, and tanks. So we try out a commando heavy tank composition, pushing forward through the enemy lines. We take a secondary base, but a single muon pool has so many resources that it's easy to one base in this game for a very long time. We can also use the teleportation base, to be read as a human Nidus canal, that can transport our units to the front line and crush the enemy base under the tracks of our tanks. The actual first encounter with the Intellions, according to the story, is now, as a mining colony is attacked out of the blue by these mechanical spiders. We get two bases to defend and build up this time. I wanted to try out an all-air composition for once, so I amassed a control group of aerofighters and I set out in search of the enemy bases. They're not the best, but they do well in a group, so I take out two bases and the mission ends. I mentioned initially that the maps are unnecessarily large for what they want you to do, but just look at the minimap here. Besides my two bases and the enemy two bases, that entire sea of black is nothing but unexplored cliffs and fields. We sign a peace treaty with the Intellions, and some cutscenes would have been nice, to be honest. Anyway, since we've rebuilt our forces, and we are impervious to the Creator mind control attacks, we set out to recapture Earth. This is a fun no-build mission where we need to deactivate 7 seals to be able to attack the Delta Central Safeguard Base. Yeah, I'm not sure what they mean by that. Think of this as the cerebret of the Overmind. We'll move from base to base, clearing out the enemies, and rushing the seals to get more reinforcements for the fight. The enemy also sports behemoths that look silly but have a nasty AoE fire-breathing attack, not to mention the demons and rocks. Help, the demons are one-shotting the tanks. In the end, I reach the Delta Cerebrate, and it looks like a cosmic horror from a Lovecraftian story. I love it. The Intellions decide to break their peace treaty after one mission, a new high score. We finally unlock tier 3, so let's spam out some flying fortresses. I meet the enemy copolymer battleships in battle, and they prove to be a real nuisance. And then I see it. The largest land army of this entire game is breaking down my door. I'm really unsure how I could have beaten this without a control group of fortresses and their firepower. Why are we playing on brutal? I know this game was made in South Korea, but I don't think I have enough APM for this. Once the onslaught is over, I can clear out the 4 enemy bases without any issues and win. The Intellions apparently gain strength in the presence of a special crystal from their home planet. Weary from the fight, they plan to build a matter transporter to import some of those sweet crystals, so we have 30 minutes to destroy the portal before they get it. Wanting to avoid the Intellion meth rage, we start with the tier 3 core and everything else we need to build the flying fortresses. So that's what I'm doing. With our Chad in a warship and 9 others on standby, we rush the enemy teleportation structure and cast bombardment on it. It sounds like 10 siege tank shots and it hits like them too. As we one-shot the damn thing and win the mission. The last mission doesn't let up. We're placed in the middle of the map, surrounded by enemies on all sides. I send out Rakin, the death warship, who deals 300 ground damage to clear out an entire enemy base on his own. Even with a crippling blow, the enemy musters an attack force big enough to almost wipe us out. We now reach a problem with the enemy attacks that's going to be more evident later on. But it feels impossible to defend and push back at the rate the enemy attacks us. So we rush the enemy command centers while our base is being burned to the ground, and we take them out right before my final buildings are destroyed. The end cutscene plays, wrapping up the story as we've won the war. But apparently there are other powers out there, aliens unknown to us. And after that it's just a credit scene. What the hell, can I even show this? Overall I enjoyed the campaign, especially the Lovecraftian safeguard bases. The hominid units feel familiar and easy to use. The tanks and airships are really strong, and combined with the bunkers, ambushers and turrets, they can really entrench a position and hold it down. Not to mention the fortresses with the strongest anti-ground attack in the game, 4 out of 5 warships. The Intellions, descendants of the White Angel cells and the good of humanity. That's why we have our hero Anyoms calling the council disgusting cowards in the first briefing of the campaign. Ah, classic Protoss shenanigans. We get to play with Anyoms, who uses the Blade model, a giant 4.5 meters tall zealot who can teleport and has a squad of hickeys and manglers. You're probably noticing the second bar next to the unit HP, and you'll think those are the regenerating shields since we're playing Protoss and the bar is blue. But actually all mechanical buildings and units have a non-regenerating armor stat. Once that's down, you can't repair it in any other way. Everyone has this except the Kreators, of course. They're 100% meat. So everyone wave goodbye to Discount Phoenix here. The next mission is 23 years later. I guess nothing important happened in that time. The Hominian campaign took 50 years, so I'm guessing we want to break that record with these guys. Speaking of the Terran, this mission takes place after we've destroyed the teleportation terminal back in mission 7 of the previous campaign. With the Intellions tweaking out without the Kyber crystals from home, we call the humans stupid vermin and attack their home planet. Welcome to the Protoss base, where everything is blue and has flashing lights, and or is on fire. The refinery is called a sucking station. Every unit talks like they're mumbling underwater. And I used the ground Mutalist biker to take out the enemy base. Apparently that was the last Hominian base and they're almost wiped out. In the meantime, the Kreators have been a pain in the ass and launched an attack on our home planet. Another hard start as we have to defend against some heavy early attacks. The Intellions don't have any siege units, so when going for a ground composition, just build 4 outposts, and spam out infantry units. This is another mission with an unnecessarily huge labyrinthian map. We all remember how Tassadar was hunted by the Conclave. Well, here Anyoms, the hero from the first mission, is court-martialed by the council for incompetence, so he starts a rebellion. This goes so well that Anyoms is imprisoned and the rebellion dies in the next paragraph. I was rooting for him and I really hoped for a mirror match for once. So now we play as Neptune, the next council pawn, and we have to fight more Zerg. Strangely enough, we unlock the whole tech tree by mission 4, we can build the copolymer battleships and the Dark Portal that unlocks the Novadis. Now this is a fun unit. Similar to the Protoss Templar, he can cast fun abilities like Storm, well, a legally distinct Ice Storm of course, and an even better one, Death. What does it do, you may ask? Well, it sacrifices the unit to one-shot any unit in the game. Amazing. So I try out a composition of all the air units I can muster, and I have to say this is an unkillable ball of death that can take out any units that approach, be them air or ground. Barunka was freed by Laberun, and what am I even reading at this point? Mission 5 is called Mission 5 because it takes 5 minutes to do it. We start off with the prison break mentioned in the brief, and we have to escape with Neptune to the warp gate. He looks like a weird space squid man, and he's a Novadis unit, meaning I can cast Death and lose the mission instantly. Now this is what I call peak game design. Anyway, just make a transport and fly him to the warp gate to win. Enyoms appears again in text form, and this time with a successful rebellion he takes over the council and prepares for the final assault on Earth. We get to make another fleet of ships and take out another Delta cosmic horror. Air units feel too strong in this game, and it's hard for anything else to keep up with a few battleships. The damage combined with huge health and armor stats means it's terribly hard to remove a pack of them. Mix them with some other ships and it's over. We now lead a strike force against the Overmind itself. Oh, I forgot to talk about 2 things for this faction. First off, we have the Burn Tower. This bad boy has a beam attack that deals so much damage. If you stack like 4 of them, nothing can break the base. Even better if you have some units in the front to distract the enemy, so it does its thing unhindered. And the second thing is a small unit called the Junker, which we've had unlocked from the start. While I haven't used it at all because, well, it's junk, we basically have a walking, armored baneling that explodes in a small AoE, and as a bonus, it can cloak. Just not enough damage to justify pumping resources into it. I don't want to spend an hour clearing out the whole map, so a few ships are enough to sneak in the enemy base and take out the Delta's central safeguard base. This thing is huge, it looks awesome, and it even blinks. Much better than the old mushy rock we've had in the past. And the last mission isn't even a mission, just the ending cutscene. With everyone wiped out, the Intellions decide to splice in some Creator DNA to get rid of their mechanical bodies. They succeed in making the weird bird woman again, but this genetic change made them more aggressive and basically waged war on everything else. The end. A short but still alright campaign, with the difficult missions front-loaded in the start of it. The faction feels like it's lacking unit diversity. 4 ground units, 3 air units, almost no heroes, and some random casters make a poor army composition, so you end up spamming air units in the end. The names are also strange. Sucking Station aside, you've got the Neodis, Zerodis and Novadis units. Ask me now which is which and I can't tell you. Speaking of the Neodis, it's a flying caster that can cloak a single unit, speed them up or slow them down. Interesting, but not at all useful at any point in the game. While the mission objectives were different enough, we end up fighting the humans only once, and then it's Creator o'clock. 4 out of 5 junkers. And now it's time for the hardest campaign of this game, with the weirdest faction. Descendants of the Black Angel cells, so basically the worst evil traits of humanity, they advanced by integrating all the genetic material they could find. I'm not talking about the rational, precise evolutions Abatur would make, I'm talking 4,000 species of fish jammed into one thing. They talk like regular people in the story, but in game it's all Zerg sounds. And the lore wants me to believe they're also cyborgs that use computers, and every single building is just an amalgam of flesh and bone. Sure, this campaign also suffers the most from quality issues, from the simple mission objectives to the translation issues and general lack of QA. In the brief, the objectives say we'll lose the mission if Kais or Barunga die, but in-game he's named Barunka. Apparently the reason for the invasion, and the only thing stopping our dominion, was the fact that humans were using artificial suns, so the Deltas hacked their main computer to blow them up. Sounds like an epic mission to play or a sick cutscene, but it's all text. Are we still sure these are all humans? You're telling me the small fire that crawls on all 4s is the same as the inflatable goofy handsman? No disrespect to the behemoths, of course, they have 60 ground attack in a fire-breathing cone, and they carry my fights. We pursue the humans in the polar regions, and apparently the meatball people don't like the cold. Do you know how campaigns gradually introduce new units throughout them in a mission that highlights their strengths? The early game with infantry-only battles, where an enemy tank can spell doom, your first air unit, unlocking the heavy players like tanks or artillery, and finally the ultimate unit for that faction, maybe a super weapon or a battleship. But this game doesn't want to do that. Everything is available from the start, and with interesting mission objectives like destroy the enemy base, no cutscenes or dialogue, it can feel like a stream of endless skirmish games at times. Well, here it is, the campaign where we finally get a base and we're locked to tier 1. This means fires and leopards only. It's here we get confirmation that the entire creator economy is built on the back of Australians, as they employ Aussies to mine resources and grow into buildings. In typical fashion, we get a hero only for this mission, never to be seen again, and La Baroon is a flyer who must reach the enemy Neolis crystal to win the mission. We can't fly over as the area is fortified, so you have to go around the entire map with a ground force, taking out enemy bases along the way. At some point, they send a conga line of ATVs past my army, into my base only to snipe my hero. Aware of the power in the White Angel cells, the creators knew the Intellions would be the most formidable enemy of them all. So we launch an attack on their home world, starting with this mining base. It's actually a collection of sucking bases, but we get access to tier 2 at least. That doesn't mean rocks, demons, or at least behemoths. We only get access to basic flyers, like the Crow. It has a meager health pool, barely any damage, but wait, the worst air unit can pick up the worst ground unit and carry them around. At least their shadow looks like a skull on the ground, and that's the only good thing about this combo. We also get new casters like the Rake, unit with no attack and useless spells, or the Sneaker, unit with no attack and a snipe ability that depletes the whole energy bar. We are in a sorry state while the enemy has a full tech tree at its disposal. That includes the tanky copolymers, cloaked junkers and the Novadis with storms. While we get jack shit to deal with these units. I thought I was supposed to be the swarm. So I take out the sucking base with a group of cloaked flyers while the enemy attacks my base. This marks the point in the campaign where we must shift to cheesing everything, just 3 missions in. Mission 4 wants us to defend the base until Recult escapes, but that's not the objective at all. We just have to bring Recult to the end ourselves. So just make one of those flying meat saucers with a periscope. You'll manage to drop him off close enough to the end so he'll be able to make it before the 2 burn towers kill him. And from here on out, it's all bullshit. Mission 5, destroy the Intellion bases, so we erect a wall of sunken colonies, mold, it's just mold, and use Hornets as they're cheaper and easier to make than any other competent unit we have, even if you have access to the last tier of units. Mission 6, destroy the Hominid bases in 24 minutes, you don't have enough time to make rocks, and ground units would take too long to navigate the labyrinth, so just make Hornets and snipe the 4 command centers. Mission 7, destroy a prison to free Barunka, Hornets again. Mission 8, destroy the Hominid base. Mission 9, destroy the Intellion base. They didn't even bother to finish the campaign properly. It started so well, and by the halfway point it's just skirmish games against 4 AIs. This was the biggest letdown for me. The creators got the short end of the stick with the most uninspired units and mission design. Granted, the demon is cool, but nothing really stands out beside it. And what the hell is an Aztekhemoid? It can make a Shogger or a Bombger, and you can pick them up with a crow and place them as traps, like we needed more of those. Something tells me Giant Grant Games won't make a deathless run for this game, and it's probably for the best, to be honest. The end cutscene shows us the creators absorbing so much DNA and evolving so rapidly that not even the deltas could keep up with the rate of mutation. This led to creator clans that were outside of their control, so they developed a deadly virus that remained hidden in a lab, for it was so strong it could wipe out even the loyal clans. One accidental explosion later at the research institute, and the virus escapes, leading to the quiet extermination of the race in 3 months. So to recap, the humans win the war and get nuked by an advanced alien race, the Intellions evolve into perfect beings and rule the galaxy, while the creators get COVID and die out. 2 out of 5 Aztekhemoids. The multiplayer has 15 maps, and without a level editor, that's all you're getting in terms of custom matches. Even if there were other people playing, there isn't a server or game browser, meaning you need to know the IP of the person you're trying to play with. I've managed to annoy a friend long enough to try this out, and it works. I am beyond surprised. And with the help of none other than Magnum Pedro, we get to see how this thing plays out outside of single player. The game went well, and I tried to build some ambushing commandos. But in true StarCraft fashion, I died to a ping zergling rush from a man who is playing the game for the first time ever. Some things never change. In the end, I'm not mad, just disappointed. None of the campaigns have any mirror matches, rogue Intellions, human bandits, or an out-of-control brood were a good reason to let us fight our own faction. But no. While there were a few highlights, the Creator campaign left a bitter taste in my mouth. I would have loved a voiceover for the cutscenes or any other way of delivering the lore to us, besides people arguing in a text box. This might have worked if the game was ancient, but it was 2002, and StarCraft did it better in 98. The game also lacks an immersive atmosphere, something to get you sucked in and excited to play. Not to worry, the next game I have planned is all atmosphere. In the meantime, play this one only if you like StarCraft or you enjoy a challenge. Until then, thank you all for watching and let me know what are some of your favorite older games. I put all the interesting ones on a giant list to eventually cover in an episode of Forgotten Games. Take care and see you in the next one.